Minecraft's underground has been changed so much in the last 3 updates, it can almost be classified as its own dimension. So in this video, I'll teach you everything about caves and cave biomes in Minecraft. If there's an area that could have stone or deep slate, stone will generate from Y256 all the way down to Y0, and then deep slate will generate from Y7 all the way down to Y-63. And that small area of overlap between Y0 and Y7 is what gives you this section of sort of mixed area between the stone and the deep slate. But Minecraft's cave generation is incredibly diverse, with all kinds of different caves being able to generate, and the combinations being seemingly endless. So what are the specific cave generation types? Let's start with ravines, also known as canyons. The first thing you need to know about ravines is they can actually generate at any height. So for instance, we could have this ravine right here that generates with a very large section that is exposed to the sky there, but the vast majority of ravines are contained somewhat hidden underground. So of course we have this exposed ravine, but just over from it here is a different ravine that is generated along with the Dripstone cave biome. Also on the sides of them there's these sort of walkway type things you can see, where part of the stone will go in and then out again, which can provide you this little area to crawl. The ravines tend to be anywhere from 85 to 127 blocks long, however they can be different lengths than this. So the width of this structure can only be up to 15 blocks wide, but as thin as basically 1 to 2 blocks wide, and the total height of ravines in Java Edition is between 27 to 62 blocks. But this is completely different in Bedrock Edition. So in Bedrock Edition there is no practical limit on how deep they can be. For instance, this ravine right here could go all the way down to lava at the bottom mixed with bedrock in the deep slate layer. Carver caves have been in the game for a very long time, and they tend to generate higher up than most other caves. So let's find an example of a Carver cave. Well, here's one right here. Now how can we tell this is one? So we have the main room. For instance, here's one right here, although it intersects with some other tunnels. Then off of it right here, this is what's known as a trunk. And a trunk's diameter is between 1 to 38 blocks, so of course this one's a bit smaller, but they can also be really, really large. And this is the largest type of cave you would have found before Minecraft 1.18. Here's a good example of a trunk right here. Something really good to remember if you're trying to see if a cave is a Carver cave or one of the new 1.18 caves is that the floor will tend to not be angled. So for instance right here we don't have sort of random blocks poking up to the side. This is really a coherent tube. And then off of the trunks there can be branches. So right here is a branch. As you can see it's quite a bit thinner than the trunk was, and it also goes for quite a while, should twist around a bit and then eventually stop. It's sort of like a tree that way. We have the main trunk of the tree, and then we have the branches going off of that tree, and of course there's sort of the main foundational base room that all of it comes off of. Main rooms connect to up to 4 trunks, and one trunk has 0 to 2 branches. So we have a main room right here, and you can see this one has 3 different trunks that are coming off of it. Or for instance right here we have a very large trunk, and then off of this trunk we have some branches. So there's a branch right there, then there's also a branch that's going up here. Also, if you're wondering the difference between a trunk and a branch, it's mostly just the size and what it generates off of. So of course this is one of the wide trunks, and this is a branch right here, and we know that because branches are between 1 to 7 blocks in diameter. So that's everything about Carver caves, but we have the new type of cave, and those caves are called noise caves. They're called noise caves because of the way that they generate in a Minecraft world. So noise caves consist of spaghetti caves, cheese caves, noise pillars, and noodle caves. Now what's the difference between all these cave types? Well, the good thing is, unlike the variants of Carver caves, these things are incredibly easy to identify. So we'll start with cheese caves. Cheese caves are fundamentally those absolutely large caves you can now find in Minecraft that tend to have some noise pillars in them. The best way to identify these two is that they tend to not be tunnel shaped, but rather very large and open rooms, sometimes with multiple floors to them, and they will contain these huge pillars. Ancient cities will almost always generate inside of cheese caves low down, and for instance we can see this cheese cave had a ton of pillars that were interrupted in their generation by the ancient city, so they're kind of just floating there. And cheese caves aren't always that tall, so this one right here is a bit of a shorter cheese cave filled with a ton of these support columns that go through it. So that's how you identify a cheese cave, and these tend to be really good for mining in as well, of course, because they just expose so many different ores. Actually, it's another really funny example of a cheese cave. This is one as well. well, it is super short and these pillars are really compressed, but again we can tell it's one because it tends to form a room, whereas our next cave type, which is a spaghetti cave, does not form rooms, it forms tunnels. Like this right here is a spaghetti cave, this massive area that goes straight down, tending to also go to weird angles at many points, changing its Y level, sometimes opening up more wide or being more vertical. Now this is sort of opening up into a different cave type, but over here again we can see we do have this being just a spaghetti cave. Spaghetti caves are called that because they reminded the developers of huge spaghetti noodles that sort of twisted underground. And you can see here how it does sort of form a bit of a noodle shape like this. The thing about spaghetti caves is they can also get fairly thin. So sometimes when you're going around the overworld and you see those strange large wide openings to caves, those are basically always spaghetti caves. And a big thing to remember is that spaghetti caves tend to be at very strange angles like this, and so if you see the ground you're walking at to be forming really weird angles as well as being a large, wide and thin tunnel, guaranteed you have a spaghetti cave. However, I did also mention noodle caves. Now spaghettis are noodles, but they're not to be confused with noodle caves. Let's find a noodle cave underground here. Noodle caves are fundamentally the exact same as spaghetti caves, but they're very small. They're kind of like the new form of the branches of the old cave generation. So right here we have a noodle cave, and you'll notice it does kind of resemble the spaghetti cave but much smaller. These are those types of caves you sometimes find in Minecraft where they're almost impossible to get through, if not impossible sometimes, and tend to form strange angles as well. They're not always incredibly small, so they're 1 to 5 blocks wide, and for instance if we walk over here, you can see this gets incredibly wide and thin, just as if it was a giant spaghetti cave. This is the perfect example of a noodle cave. So think of noodle caves as baby spaghetti caves in all the different ways that they generate. Now you might consider an aquifer cave to be a type of cave biome, which we will get into very soon here, but it doesn't actually generate that way. And so basically how aquifer caves work is that caves underneath any biome, but especially a watery biome, can tend to be flooded, or at least have a big proportion of water in them. Aquifer caves often do connect up to rivers as well. These can be very good to swim around in and cave in. Because of the way that ores generate, some types of ores will be much more frequent if you're underwater. Also, other than being flooded, they fully resemble standard caves, even having glow lichen that generates in them, but there are sometimes the occasional magma blocks that spawn here, and they can also sometimes generate like this, let's say with a different cave biome, so this flooded dripstone cave, where there's also air in it, making some very beautiful underground lakes. So if there's going to be an aquifer, it can generate as being with lava, but only if it's below Y0, or basically fully within the deep slate layer. As an example right here, this is a lava aquifer, where we have a standard cave that was filled up all the way with lava. However, right next to it, there's actually little bits of water aquifer cave that generated also. Every single aquifer cave below Y55 will always be filled with lava. This can give us absolutely beautiful lava lakes like this generation right here. Alright, but you stumble into a cave, how do you actually deal with this and not die? Well, the first thing is to bring the right things with you. You want to have your full set of tools, a shield, as well as some armor. The shield is great for blocking attacks from mobs, and of course with the weapons you can fight the mobs. Even some ranged weapons can definitely be a good idea. So you can actually see in the cave, you want to bring torches with you. If you have Optifine like I do right now, you can kind of see with the torches in your hand. But another really good idea if you're a bit later game is to bring night vision potions. These are made by adding a golden carrot to an awkward potion, and this definitely makes it a lot easier to see inside the cave. However, we do have a problem. Let's say we're trying to cave underwater here. Well, what do we do if we're going to run out of air? There's a couple options, but one really good one is to use doors if you're in Java Edition. If you're in Bedrock Edition, magma blocks are the answer. If you have a huge cave you want to spawn proof, how do you know when it's light enough? Well, a torch every 12 blocks apart in a grid will do it. However, another good way of thinking about it is that if anything is at light level 0, then it can spawn mobs, but if it's at even light level 1, it can't. And something you may notice is I'm actually running out of food here and I'm having to eat rotten flesh. That's one of the reasons why you want to always make sure to bring a bunch of food with you to a cave, and as well as that you want to bring some logs, and make it so you do not have to go all the way back up to the surface to get yourself a random block, just to craft yourself some sticks. And of course, again, using a combination of our shield to, let's say, block creepers and skeletons, and using our sword to hit them, it can be pretty easy to navigate caves, as long as you have enough food to replenish your health when you do lose your health. And of course, if you are going in, let's say, a deep dark biome, be sure to always bring wool. But as you can see, there is a lot more to caves than just what their shape is. There is cave biomes, and that's on to the second part of this guide. So there's 4 types of cave biomes, and the first one only generates in old versions of the game, and that is Legacy Flooded. This is basically how Minecraft added underwater caves in the update Aquatic. So you can see right here there are a couple differences. The first one is, if the cave was exposed to the air, it could actually generate kelp inside of it. The other thing is that you could have seagrass around these underwater caves. This is a big difference between these and aquifers, as aquifers do not contain seagrass. As for instance, this area right under here is completely buried, but there's still seagrass. And the other difference is, instead of there just being little bits of magma around, basically inside of Minecraft 1.17 and before's underwater caves that were first added in 1.13, where a lava lake would have spawned, you actually would get magma mixed with obsidian. And because of the way it generates, this was a favorite of speedrunners, and something I hope they eventually do add back to Minecraft is these slightly better underwater caves. Now let's go on to a cave biome that you can actually find in present Minecraft, and that is the Dripstone caves. To start, how do you actually find the Dripstone caves? Well, if we take a look at the location of this Dripstone cave biome and go above it, you may notice something. Every single direction we look, what do we not see any of? No ocean. You see, the further an area is from an ocean, the higher its continentalness value is. Now, of course, a continent is like a large area of land, so if something has a high continentalness, it means it's very far inland. Then once we find that area of the high continentalness, no matter what biome is above it, it is very likely for a dripstone cave to generate, and dripstone caves can be absolutely amazing, like this huge one here. In fact, literally just by what we're looking at right now, we can see the entire extent of what we get inside of a dripstone cave. The first one is, there are just right here, dripstone blocks that generate all around on the ground and on the ceiling, basically just giving it that look of a dripstone cave. Of course, also there is the high number of dripstone spikes in the dripstone caves biome. Like right here, there's a beautiful view of that, all these different spikes sticking out of the ground. You can just collect these, by the way, by breaking the bottom block, much like you might collect sugarcane or bamboo. The same type of thing like this generates on the roof as well, just not quite as frequently. The other thing we get, as well as the singular dripstones, are the massive large dripstone clusters. Here's an example of one right here. These are basically huge recreations of the dripstone out of dripstone blocks. These things have more dripstone in them than you'd ever need, so if you do want to build out of dripstone blocks, it's definitely really easy to do that with these, and of course they'll only generate in large dripstone caves. Additionally, dripstone caves will have a couple random water blocks, and finally, inside of dripstone caves, copper generates in really large blobs and is more frequent, although of course right there I find 2 individual copper blocks. In general, of course, it does tend to be true. So for instance, up here we have a very large blob of copper that generates inside this cave here. So if you're looking for copper anytime, be sure to look inside of the dripstone cave. And one last important thing, if there is an aquifer inside of the dripstone cave, these aquifers can generate drowns in them, unlike every other underground biome. Onto lush caves. But where do you actually find this axolotl containing lush cave? Well, the lush cave will generate under humid areas, so that means commonly underneath wooded badlands and jungles. Also, if you find a bamboo jungle or a old growth taiga or dark forest, they will almost always be the type of cave biome that generates underneath there. Even if it is bordering a jungle or some other type of humid biome, you will never find a lush cave generate underneath a forest biome or a plains or savanna or other type of grassy biome. And if that wasn't enough info on how to find one, there's an even easier method, and that is azalea trees. If you do find an azalea tree, all you have to do is dig underneath it. You'll be digging out this rooted dirt that generates underneath it in this kind of strange pattern. And finally, here at the bottom, we've fallen into a lush cave, so do be aware of that. But anyway, that is how you find the lush cave. So once you've found it, what do you get in the lush cave? Well, for starters, as you saw right here, you do get a lot of tropical fish. Tropical fish can generate in the water of the Lush cave, because oftentimes the cap of water mobs in a Minecraft world is not filled when you're in a Lush cave, because they're not always next to the ocean, for example. These things can absolutely fill up with fish and basically make yourself natural fish farms. The reason why tropical fish generate here is because they're the favorite food of the axolotl, and the axolotls can generate here as well and even fight those tropical fish. The axolotls live in these beautiful clay pools. Now the pools themselves also grow drip leaf as well as small drip leaf. Both these items are incredibly beautiful and make the Lush cave something really special. There's also azalea bushes that are flowering and non-flowering that are here, moss blocks, moss carpets, and tall and short grass. This is very similar to what you would get by just bone mealing a moss block and what goes around it. But there's two other things that are quite cool here, and that is on the roof we have these flowers that have the particles around them. These are known as spore blossoms, and they're really beautiful to bring back to a base because they drip these spores all around a huge area. And finally, looking at the roof all the way up there, we see that on the roof of Lush caves, as well as there being some moss blocks, there is also the cave vines. Now these are sometimes referred to as glowberries, but the actual vines themselves are called cave vines, but they grow glowberries. Right clicking with a glowberry on anything will make it plant down like that. These can make a really good food source if you're in a Lush cave, and because they're also a light source, they actually make there be a lot less hostile mobs here than you would think. Now for really the exact opposite of the Lush caves, the Deep Dark. This is a very sinister biome, unlike the Lush caves, and inside of it we actually have no mobs that can naturally generate. The only thing that can appear here sometimes is the warden. So for starters, where do you find the Deep Dark biome? Underneath mountains is a good place to start, but it doesn't have to be. The idea is it generates only underneath areas of low erosion, so basically really high up areas. That could even just be like that bit of plains biome and forest over there because it's quite high up. Its erosion is so low, and if we go beneath it, you can see, yes indeed, this is a deep dark biome under here. Deep dark biomes only start deep, and so because of that, you'll very rarely see them in the stone layer of a world, almost only generating in the lower half of the deep slate layer. However, sometimes if they're feeling incredibly bold, you will see these generate quite high up. So the deep dark generates with a couple different things. We have these skulk blocks. These are a great instant source of XP and also give you a lot of exposed ores underneath them. Then there is these skulk veins. These don't give you anything back in return, but can be great for decoration. Now throughout the Deep Dark, we have these things. These are known as shriekers, and they are incredibly dangerous. If they shriek just like that, or in some other different tone, 4 times a warden will spawn. But the good news is you can break them just like I did there. And they also can't really sense you on their own. They sense you in coordination with these sensors. So if we trigger the sensor right here, you can see it sends a signal to the shrieker, makes it go off. But we can break that before it sends a signal, then we're fine. If you crouch, those sensors don't get a signal. We go up to the shrieker, break the shrieker, and we're fine. Nothing in the Deep Dark is dangerous except for those shriekers. Catalysts are right over here, and you can see kind of what they look like. They do have the light bit on them like the shriekers do, but they're a solid block. And if something dies nearby the catalyst, more skulk will grow next to it. And also, hostile mobs do not generate in any capacity inside the Deep Dark biome, so because of that, it's actually a really good biome once those shriekers are gone to settle down in because it's fully safe. If you do want to stop a shrieker, just surround it in wool fully, and also break all the sensors nearby. This is a good way of disabling this without destroying it, as if you pick it up, even with Silk Touch, it can never summon in wardens again. Anyway, that is everything about all the different cave biomes and cave types in Minecraft. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to press the like button, subscribe to see more Minecraft guides, feel free to check out my other guides on my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!